Okay, in this video we're going to go over the different options for the different plugins that are available for Maya and for the different Collada plugins and the different options for exporting. There are, because of the collision bone rotations, there's a number of different options that we have to choose from. That kind of complicates things a bit, but we've got, with the help of my testers, like Mark Tour, he really helped me figure out a lot of these issues. Okay, so I'm using Maya 8.0, which is a pretty old version of Maya. It's basically Maya 2007. And older versions of Maya, like mine, I think it goes from 8.0 up to 2009, might have this particular issue and have to do it, and their options might be a little bit more limited. With newer versions of Maya 2010 and newer, you have more options. So let's get to it. So we'll start with the older versions, such as Maya 8.0. So we're at the point which we've rigged our mesh clothing, and we've got all of the weighting the way we want, and we want to export it out as a DAE file. Now, with older versions of Maya, you have two options, and they're both based. The reason you have two is that the collision bones have these weird rotations in Second Life, and older versions of Maya, such as 8.0, when you export out as a DAE file using the Autodesk FBX exporter, it doesn't export out the information correctly, even when you have the bones rotated to the rotations that they are in Second Life. So that's why in another video I showed that we have this section here for earlier versions of Maya, and it's 2009 and earlier versions. When you set the skeleton for 2009, it actually sets the rotations to 0. And that's because it doesn't matter what the rotations are set at when you export them out using the Autodesk FBX exporter. I think it loses that information, and so it doesn't export out correctly. And so we have two options. We can do a procedure that I call opposite bone rotation procedure, or you can use the open source Collada plugin called the COLLADAmaya plugin, and I'm going to have links to where you can get them and download them. And the only thing when you're using that plugin is that you have to get the bone names of the bones that are in the skin cluster and edit the DAE file in a word processing program. And I'll go through that as well. If you're doing where you're using the open source Collada, the COLLADAmaya plugin, and you don't have to do the opposite bone rotation procedure, then the only thing you then have to do is you have to get the skin cluster bone names, which I've written a nice little script that will help you be able to copy and paste them real easily. And then that's all you have to do. Then you're good to go. The only benefit to the opposite bone rotation procedure is that it's actually a little bit more accurate than on all versions of Maya. It's more accurate than newer versions of Maya 2010 and newer that are using the Autodesk FBX exporter plugin. It goes in like this, in order of most accurate. Most accurate is the opposite bone rotation procedure, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we come to here the earlier versions of Maya, and we click this, let's see, opposite, or the rotations for SL, and you notice that the neck gets a little funny. and so does the stomach area. That's because those bones rotate. If I had sleeves, you would notice that the arms start to look like spaghetti. And so in order to counteract that, we have to do what's called the opposite bone rotation, which is you switch it to opposite bone rotation, you create a duplicate, and because we've just deformed our mesh, you create a duplicate so the deformation stays, and then you re-rig the deformed mesh with the bones in their normal rotation, and then you would have saved your weights before before creating the duplicate, and then you just apply the weights that you saved to the duplicate. So what you end up with is a mesh that is deformed like that. But when you wear it in Second Life, because the bones are rotated, it would rotate the deformation back into position. Now that's actually the most accurate way of getting fitted mesh to work in Second Life. But a lot of people don't like having their mesh distorted like that. They don't want it distorted like that. So, and it's really only, let's see, the Collada, the COLLADAmaya plugin is like almost like 99% as accurate as the opposite bone rotation. The FBX, the Autodesk FBX exporter plugin, is about 98.75 as or maybe even more. It's just slightly, I think the Collada, the FBX Autodesk plugin is just a little less accurate than the open source Collada plugin. But the difference is so minor that you probably wouldn't even notice the difference between them. So it depends on how accurate you need to have your mesh be. How accurate is it compared to what you're seeing in MayaStar, in Maya, using MayaStar. Even with the opposite bone rotations, you will see a slight difference, and that's mainly due to when you export out as a DAE file, the exporters, none of them are 100% accurate. And so even though MayaStar is, I think it's pretty darn near 100% accurate as far as all the numbers line up perfectly now. So that in Maya, it's doing exactly what it's doing in Second Life. The only difference is that since none of the exporters are 100% accurate, there's going to be a very small variation between what you see in Maya and what you see in Second Life. But the difference is going to be so minor that it takes a really trained eye to see there's just a little bit more skin poking through than there was in Maya, So it's really not going to be anything worth worrying about as far as accuracy. So let's get into the plugins themselves. I'm going to show you where you can download them. Let's go to the internet. Oh, that's my screen capture. Okay, so the first one here this is for the older versions of Maya, and you can see down here it's a Maya 1.4.1, which is the newest version of Collada, and which is the best version in that it really makes the file sizes much smaller. And this is the open source version of the COLLADAmaya. And it's good from Maya 7 through 2009. And they have it for 64-bit, but they also have it for 32-bit. I'm on 32-bit Maya 8.0, and this is the one I use for COLLADAmaya, the open source. It's 3.05c, and you can get it right here. Like I said, I'll provide these links in the description. You can also get the same exact plugin at another source here. This is for Max, 3D Max, and this is for Maya 4.1. You just click there, and it will take you to another page which you can go to the 3.5. Oh no, here it is, COLLADAmaya free 3.5c. It's the same exact one. So at least there's two sources in case one, for some reason, because it's getting older, the web page might disappear, and so it's nice to have these two options. Let's see, the third one is an open source Collada that newer versions of Maya can use. Even though it says down here OpenCOLLADA for 2010 through 2014, I do believe it does work. Well, that's for Mac, I believe, OS 10. Windows is 2010 through 2013. I believe it also works all the way up through 2015. And so this is the open source Collada that the newer versions of Maya can use. And so you can download it from here. Let's see, Dropbox is just another place you can download COLLADAmaya, and they got it for Mac and Windows. And you can go into here and choose probably the 2015, and it gives you installation of how to install it, and I believe it even has some Mel scripts that you can use for the newer versions of Maya. I don't have a newer version of Maya, so I can't really test it out. Let's see, the older versions of Maya here I believe are only for Windows, unfortunately. I don't think I haven't found one for Mac. If anybody does find one, please let me know. And so these are the different sections, different ones. Now Autodesk has an archive of all. I don't know why 2014 plugin isn't here. I know there was an issue like between 2011 or 2012 and early 2013 plugins didn't work with Second Life. But I do know for a fact that if you can download 2013.3, that this plugin works perfectly. As far as it works just fine. It doesn't crash or anything. I'm on the earliest, the newest version I can use of Autodesk plugin is 2009.1. And so that's why I think probably most likely Maya's 2009 might have to do the rotations, unless your 2009 might be able to download a newer plugin earlier enough. So like if we go to 2013.3, we can see that no thanks. You can see that it goes back to people who have 2011 can get the 2013.3 64-bit. This is a 32-bit. And then Mac can get those there. Linux can get it here. Haven't tried MayaStar on Linux yet. Haven't found anybody who really has it to be able to test it out for me. And so if you have 2011, I would definitely upgrade your plugin to 2013.3. It's going to give you your best bet. Let's see. So, and then of course they have, these are for Macs, 3D Macs. And so, let's see. So 2000. So the only thing you need to know is when you're installing a new plugin, if you're going to do it and you don't want to lose your old plugin, just go into your bin file. Your bin file is on your C drive under Programs, under Autodesk. If you have a newer version of Autodesk, mine 8.0 was actually created by a company called Alias that owned and created Maya. And Autodesk bought them out in like 2007 or 2000. Yeah, it was 2007 when they bought it out. So Maya 8.0 was the last version that was actually created and distributed. There's actually some versions of 8.0 that say Autodesk on it, but mine, when I go into the C drive, actually says it's under Alias instead of Autodesk. So anyway, so you would go to Autodesk on your C drive. So you go C drive, Program Files, Autodesk, then you go to your plugin. I believe it's your plugin, and then goes to your plugin. And I might as well look right now. So C drive, Program Files. There's my alias, Maya 8.0. And then I go to my bin file, and these are the plugins. And so you just click on your plugin. And here I have several installed. By default, all Autodesk Maya FBX plugins, MLL files, are named FBX Maya.mll. And when you install a newer plugin, it will override this MLL program or file because it's named. I don't know why they didn't change the name every year. So what you do is you just come in here before you install a new plugin. If you got an old version of the plugin that you don't want to overwrite, and you just right mouse click on it and you click rename and you rename it. Like this one, this is the 2009.1, 2009.3, which I think I tried to install and it didn't work for me. But I know 2009.1 does work for me. Maya 2012, I think that was just the year that I tried a newer version of FBX Maya. And you'll see in here the FBX. Here's the FBX plugin, 2006.11, 2009.1. So this 2006.11 was probably this one. I should have named it 2006, but I think I named this one. I tried the new one in 2012, and so I think I just named it that. Here's the Collada, the open source Collada plugin. You can have multiple Collada plugins loaded onto your Maya with no problem, and so that way you don't have to lose. It'll simply create another folder for the new year in here. So had I not renamed this 2012, when I went to install the 2009, it would have overwritten, and I would have lost that other plugin. So that's just in case you want to not lose your old plugin. If you're happy with it and you just want to try the new one, you might have a problem with the new one. I actually sometimes use the old FBX plugin because I can export better out a regular just FBX, not a DAE file, but an FBX. For some reason, the interface works better than the newer version. And so anyway, so okay, so those are your different plugin options. And like I said, different versions of Maya have different options. The newer versions of Maya can use any plugin, the Collada, or they can use the Collada, because the newer versions of Collada from 2010 and newer, it does keep the bone names. So it does keep the bone names, and so you don't have to worry about editing the DAE file like people with 2009 and earlier versions of Maya like 2008, 2007. But if you want it the most accurate, then you would do the opposite bone rotation. Okay, so those are your different options for the different plugins that you can use. And so let me show you the procedures. I'm gonna pause the video while I get a few things ready, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so if you wanted to do the opposite bone rotations, say you wanted to have the most accurate version possible, and you did want to do the opposite bone rotations, even though you you do have that option of using the open source Collada if you have a 2009 and earlier version of Maya, or say even if you have a newer version of Maya 2010 and newer, and say you want to do it. One of the benefits of doing the opposite bone rotation is that since it does deform your mesh, it would make it basically impossible for anybody to steal your mesh clothing. As far as to steal the mesh and to try to re-rig it, they could still probably use a copy bot and steal your mesh that way. But as far as somebody ripping the mesh out of the game and then re-rigging it themselves, they would never be able to get it to look right. So that's the two kind of benefits of the opposite bone rotation is, one, it's slightly more secure against thieves because it is deformed, and it would be impossible for them to undeform it unless they spent hours trying to push everything back to where it's supposed to be. And the other reason is that it is more accurate. As far as what you see in Maya is what you get in Second Life, but it's only slightly more accurate. But I'll demonstrate how to do it. Okay, so by default, when you install MayaStar and you activate the avatar, the skeleton is set for the 2010 and newer, meaning that the collision bones already have the rotations on them. And if we were to go to the outliner and we were going to go to the skeleton, and say we go to the chest bone and go to the attribute editor and look at the rotations. Now the rotations are 0, but down here underneath joint orientation, the chest bone has a negative rotation of 10. A negative 10 rotation, which is what it is in Second Life. And that's what it says it is in the skeleton XML file that's in all the viewers. So, and like I said, there's a bunch of other collision bones that also have weird rotations on them. Like the upper arms have a rotation of 5, lower arms 3, hand has 3 and 10. Some really weird rotations. I don't know what Linden Lab was really thinking when they set up these collision bones, but they were never meant to rig regular clothing to. And I so wish that Linden Lab, when they decided to go with fitted mesh, had just decided to create all brand new bones, so that the rotations were all at 0 and the scales were all at 1. Because some of these the collision bones, they have really weird scales to them. Let's see, where is one? Thought it was maybe it's the left and lower leg. Oh, that's because I'm looking at the wrong thing. Scales. See, here's the upper leg. It has a scale of 0.09, 0.09, and 0.320. Why? I mean, other than for the collision skeleton, which is a mesh that they use to calculate collisions for when something hits your mesh avatar, these are really, it just makes everything so much more difficult. All the normal bones have scales of 1, 1, and 1, and their rotations are all 0. That's for all the normal bones, the ones that start with the letter M in front of them. And that's pretty much normal industry standard, or however you want to say it, when people set up skeletons and they have them in the T-pose, is that they want 0 rotations and 1, 1, and 1 on the scales. And so wish Linden Lab had decided to go with bones called fitted mesh bones instead of using the collision bones, which were for originally a whole different purpose. And I have a whole nother video on the history of it all that kind of explains that all. So let's see. So so you want to do the opposite rotations, So first thing I'm going to do, since I already rigged this to the newer skeleton, which has rotations on the bones, and I need to set it to the 2009 skeleton version that doesn't have these rotations on the collision bones, or at least not in the joint orientation. I'm going to detach the skin with history for this mesh. And I can do that in MayaStar under the interactive skin bind. There's a detach with history. Now what this does is it does detach it from the skeleton. And here I'll go into the so you can see this is grayed out. That means it's rigged, and you can see it does have a skin cluster. And so if I were to go to MayaStar interactive smooth bind, or skin bind, I'm sorry, interactive skin bind, and come here with detach with history, it detaches it from the skeleton. It's no longer rigged, and I can go to bind pose, but you'll notice that the skin cluster is still there. That means that now we can change the rotation of the bones by going to the earlier for the skeleton for 2009 and earlier versions. And so I'll click on that, and that just rotated the collision bones to 0 instead of having like here, I'll show you on the chest bone again. If we come down here to joint orientation, where it was -10, it is now 0. See, I can go 2010 and newer, and this is now the M pelvis bone. So I'll click on chest again, and you can see now it has a -10. And then I'll go to the skeleton for 2009 and earlier, and go to the chest bone, and you can see it has 0 rotations on it. Okay, so now we're going to re-rig our mesh to the skeleton, and there's MayaStar, and I'm going to select because I already know that this has both the normal bones and the collision bones and the normal bones added to the skin cluster already. So I'm going to go collision bone select, normal bone select, smooth bind skin, and bind the skin. Okay, and I don't have to readjust the weights because we didn't get rid of that skin cluster. So you don't have to worry about readjusting your weights. So that when if you were to detach the skin here, my default setting in Maya is to where it deletes the history. But like I said, I wrote this little mouse script in the interactive skin bind that detaches the skin, but it detaches it with history. And so it doesn't lose the skin cluster. And so so we got it back. We have the skeleton and the 0 rotations. Next thing you want to do is you want to save your skin weights. And so you want to save your skin weights. In newer versions of Maya, I know you have a lot more different options than I do to save your skin weights, but I know people who have 2014, and they prefer a free plugin called Dora Skin Weights. And I have another video where I provide a link to where you can download it for free and instructions of how to install it and all that kind of stuff. And so let me just pause the video for just a second. Sorry about that. I had I had something stuck in my throat. I had my voice is starting to go, and so I had to get a drink of water. And so anyway, okay, so with Dora Skin Weights, all you have to do to save your skin weights is select your mesh in object mode, go to the export tab, and we'll name this AAA top, and you click export. And we've just exported our weights. You'll notice that it says exported 2041 vertex points, and that's because there's 2041 vertex in this mesh top. And it says where that it was saved and all that kind of stuff. And you'll notice there's a new listing up here called AAA top. Okay, so the next thing that you want to do is in MayaStar is go to here. I'm going to tear that off. And you want to go to opposite bone rotations. And you'll notice it deforms the mesh in the opposite. Notice how the chest bone in Second Life is a -10 degrees. So when I click opposite bone rotations, it makes the chest bone positive 10 degrees. So that's why it's rotated slightly forward. And so we're going to deform the mesh in the opposite direction. And so that when you wear it and it goes to negative 10 degrees, or this is actually, it'll go back to here. So we go opposite bone rotation, and we duplicate the mesh, and we just duplicated it, and I'm going to move it out of the way slightly, although I will have to, even though it looks like it's rigged, it really isn't. Oops, I don't want that. I want to do it this way. Unlock selection. That way I can move it. It's not actually rigged. There's no skin cluster. And then what I'll do is I'll hide the original, because we don't need to have that anymore. And we'll put this back at 0. Okay, because if you didn't duplicate your mesh, you wouldn't, by duplicating the mesh, it sets the deformation. If you don't do that, it won't set the deformation and it won't work. So, so now that we got our duplicate, we want to reset the bones to 0 by going, reset bone rotation. So this puts it, this was the opposite bones, and now we're resetting it, the rotations back to the way they were, so that they have 0 rotations on it. Just clicking reset rotation doesn't necessarily put it the rotations to 0. You have to be in the newer skeleton. I mean, not the 2009 and earlier version skeleton, which we had switched to earlier. Okay, so now all you have to do is we have your mesh selected, and in MayaStar, I'll tear it off again, go collision bone select, normal bone select, smooth bind skin, and I use these selecting. You want to have selected joints. You do not want multiple bind poses on newer versions of Maya. I would use classic linear. Maximum influences are 4 in Second Life, I believe. I turn off maximum influence. You do not want removed unused influences checked. And you can play around with the drop-off rate. And then I have colorized skeleton. So let's go bind skin. And if we were to open up it here and were to try to look at the breast size, you see it's all messed up. It's not the right weights. And so I'll go mesh default just to reset, and I'll move this out of the way. And now we're going to put the weights we just saved onto this new duplicate. So you just come here to import, and we did AA top, and you go import DSW. DSW is just the file extension that this is saved under, as you can see, top.dsw. Probably stands for Doris Skin Weights. Let's see. So it takes a little while, and the more vertices that you have, the longer it may take, but it's well worth the wait. And vertex order, and here it's saying that it did it for 2041 vertex. And you definitely want to use vertex order. You don't want to use these other two when you're applying the weights back, onto the mesh. So you definitely want to use vertex order. So now if we were to check out the breast size, how they change, you can see much better. The deformation in the texture you see here is not due to the mesh. It's just a glitch in Maya's display. It's not really there. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It's not really there. Okay, so let's see. So so we got our weights on, and now we're actually ready to export. And so so we'll close this out, and we'll go into object mode, and you can go export selection here, and you can export out. I guess you could export out as a Collada DAE, but I want to export out as an FBX. So I'll go here to Windows, come here down to Preferences, Plugin Manager, and I'll use 2009, and I'll close that. And now when I go to Export Selection, I should have the ability now to export as a DAE FBX export. And then I'll just save it to my desktop, video test, and export it. And now it's ready to export or to import into Second Life. And you don't have to select the bones or anything when you're exporting. You just need your mesh selected. And if you wanted to know the bone names of what's in the skin cluster with your mesh selected, you just click bone names, and then in your script editor will appear a list of bones. These are all the bones that are in the skin cluster. So that's all the bones that are in the skin cluster. And as you can see, they have the M bones are in there. Okay. So that's basically the opposite rotation procedure. And I'm just going to hide this mesh. And I'm going to bring in the other mesh and show you. Let's see, where was it? Head, eyeball, blah, 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 blah. Where is it? I'm missing something. Oh, okay, yeah, it's underneath the group. So this is the original mesh. I believe this is, yeah, this is the duplicate. And so we'll go to our original mesh and we'll turn it back on so that we can see it again. Okay, so say you didn't want to do the opposite bone rotations. You're going to be using, say, either you have a newer version of Maya and you're using the FBX Maya exporter. You do not have to export it out as an FBX and use the standalone converter. There's actually no reason to have to use that. All versions of Maya can use these plugins and export out directly as a DAE file. One thing I did forget to mention is older versions of Maya, like 8.0, has a problem with exporting out mesh with textures applied to them. And so what I would have done in this case, I would have right mouse clicked on, held down my right mouse button, and just simply applied the Lambert back before I exported it out as a DAE file. So if you export out your mesh and it won't upload to Second Life and you're using an older version of Maya, such as Maya 8.0, and it doesn't upload, it's probably because it might be because you have a texture associated with that Lambert or Fong or Blinn. And you can export out multiple faces, multiples. You just have to, if this was, say, I had 2 or 3 different faces or materials assigned to it, I would just create 3 new Lamberts and assign those blank new Lamberts to each one of those areas of the mesh, and it would upload just fine, and you would just have to apply the textures manually. One thing to know is, I think the order in which you apply the Lamberts will be the order in which that they'll appear on the faces in Second Life. So the first one you apply is face 0, and the second one is face 1, and the third one would be face 2. So if you need to write a script for mesh clothing where you're changing textures, or you have a script to change the color of something and you need to know the face, that's how you can control which face is what in Second Life. I believe it goes by the order. I had figured it out a long time ago, so I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. I know it's not numerical. I know it's not, so you can't name them 1, 2, and 3. I know it's not alphabetical, so I'm pretty sure it's the order in which the Lamberts were either created or the order in which that they were applied to the mesh. I think it's the order in which they were applied to the mesh. So anyway, so if I wanted to do, in my version of Maya being so old, if I wanted not to do the opposite bone rotation, I have to use the OpenCOLLADA plugin. And so So let me detach the skin with history again. Okay, and let me set the skeleton for 2009, 10, and newer. That's so that, you know, the chest bone will have a -10 rotation on it and the other ones. And then when I go to, because we still have the skin cluster in, collision bones and normal bones and smooth bind skin, now it's rebounded back to the skeleton, to the newer version, the skeleton 2010 and newer. And now I am ready to export out as a DAE file using the open source Collada, the COLLADAmaya plugin. So you select your mesh, go to export, and I happen to have it already activated. So I can just go, and it says Collada Exporter DAE. And then I can do the same thing and go to the desktop, and I will name this video test 2. Okay, and so it just exported. So the thing about older versions of Maya, that the open source Collada does not export out the bone names. So this is the next thing you have to do. You have to come here again to the earlier versions of Maya with your mesh selected and click on bone names, and it will generate a list that will be at the very bottom of all the bone names that are in the skin cluster, and you just highlight them all and you hit Control C to copy it, or you can hold down the right mouse button and click copy. And then you have to open up your DAE file in a word processing program. I like Notepad++, but you can do this in Notepad. You can do this in Word, not Microsoft Word, a WordPad or whatever. And the problem with Microsoft Word is sometimes it doesn't save it as a DAE file. Sometimes I hear that you'll go to save it and it will save it in a different format. And so it's just safer to do it in either Notepad or Notepad++ or WordPad. You know, not Microsoft Word, but WordPad. And it's real easy. You just go there and you go open, and you go to where your file is. Mine's on the desktop. And I'm going to go to Details and click the date so it comes up to the top. And I open up the DAE file. And the nice thing is about the version 1.4.0 is it's very short. So I can just use my mouse wheel to scroll down. And what you're looking for, and it isn't very far down, are these bone 0, bone 1, bone 2, bone 3, bone 4, bone 5 lists. This is where the bone names need to go. So I click at the very beginning of the bone, and then I hold my shift key down and I hit the end key on my keyboard, and that selects all the way to the end. But you don't want it all the way to the end. You just want it to the last bone name. And you just, holding down the shift key, click right at the end of the name before this little, I can't remember if that's the greater or lesser sign. You do not want to get rid of this last little bit. And then you can either hit delete, or you could simply, because you had already copied the names, just hit Control V. And yeah, you'll get this long list with them on different lines. You know, but don't worry about it. They don't have to be all on the same line. There just has to, if they were, there just has to be a space between them. And so it's fine for them to be on separate lines. It makes the document slightly longer, but this is such a small document. And then you just click Save. And now it's ready to upload Second Life. So that's very, very fast. Like I said, this is only for older versions of Maya. Such as, I believe it's probably going to be 2009 and newer if you're using the Collada plugin for those years. The COLLADAmaya open source plugin. If you're using a newer version of Maya, say 2011 and newer, that version of open source Collada does put the name of the bones in, so you don't have to do this at all. You can just export it out as normal. And the great thing about 1.4.1 is that the files are so much shorter. If you were to do this with a Collada version 1.4.0, this file would be about 16,000 lines, not 902. It takes a lot longer for the uploader for Second Life to go through that long file. And so this actually uploads much faster. And so you can see by just adding, 50 or so extra lines is really nothing compared to the 16,000 lines of 1.4.0. So like I said, this one, once I clicked save, after putting these names in, it's ready to upload. And so if you want, so like I said, so the default skeleton when you first install MayaStar is the newer skeleton for 2010 and newer. If you are using an older version of Maya and you want the skeleton to be the default skeleton of 2009 and earlier, if you're going to be doing the opposite bone rotation, or if you've got a newer version of Maya and you still want to do the opposite bone rotation and you want that to be the default skeleton, all you have to do is I would go back to the bind pose and I would obviously delete your mesh clothing or open up a new scene and then go file so that there's no mesh in there or anything. That's just the avatar. And go to file and you can go either save as or save, because when you activate MayaStar, it's in its own, it's either going to be untitled or whatever the title of the Maya file that you had your mesh clothing in. So you can go save as, and you could go to your documents folder, and then you'd want to go to Maya, your version number of Maya, mine's 8.0, and then you'd want to go to your scripts folder, and you'll notice that this will probably be the only MB file in your scripts folder. I happen to have a bunch of backups and stuff in there as I was creating MayaStar. So this one will probably be the only one that's in there, is this MayaStar.mb file. And then you just click save. And then from then on, anytime you activate MayaStar, that's what's going to import. So if you were using, say you primarily make clothing for male avatars, you could come in here, change it to male avatar, and then go file, save as, and save over the file. Or say you don't like this skin texture, and say you have your own skin texture that you want to bring in. You could apply your own skin textures and then go file, save as, and save over that Maya MB file. And so that's how you set it, so that when you activate MayaStar, it comes in the way you want it. Say you want to have it to where it always opens up in the meter scale avatar. That's the avatar that's 100 times bigger. This is actually the size of the avatar in Second Life. One thing I should mention is that you never ever, with MayaStar, want to change your preferences from world units from the linear from centimeter to meter. You do not want to change that because if you do, it will mess up the when you go to the sizes and you click on the different sizes, you'll get this. These are obviously not correct. That's because because that's what happens when you change it. So you want to leave it in centimeter, even though I have at the top where it says meter centimeter avatar size. it's not actually changing the working units. Um, um, it's just changing the size of the avatar itself. It's making it 100 times bigger, and so yeah, so you want to make sure that you don't do that, and you just want to make sure that this is at centimeter. And I've tried to set it at meter and open a new window, a new scene, and it seems to always go back to centimeter anyway, which is probably why Linden Lab didn't realize that the avatar was so tiny in Maya, in that the scale was set at centimeter, and that the avatar was sent at meter. Now see, now he's back to normal, and not, you know, they just didn't realize. Oh, I almost forgot. Let's see. So the different Collada exporters have different options, and some of the options can actually make Maya freeze or crash depending on the version of Maya you're using and the plugin that you're using. So if Maya is crashing when you're trying to export a DAE file using MayaStar, the quickest, easiest solution is to come up here to in MayaStar, under the Activate MayaStar, which says Remove MayaStar Not Skeleton. What that will do is it will remove everything except for the skeleton and your mesh. You know, simplifying the scene so that there's less of a chance of anything being in the scene to cause the crash. So if you're finding that when you're trying to export the DAE file using MayaStar, if it's crashing or freezing, you're going to want to try this, which is to remove MayaStar Not Skeleton. And then you go ahead and you select your mesh and you export selection as normal. And you can always get it back by, after exporting, just hitting Control-Z a couple of times and you can get everything back. So it's not permanently lost by removing MayaStar. So that's one thing. So that's your go-to thing if you're having problems with exporting and with Maya crashing or freezing. The other thing that you can try to fix the crashing, one of my testers was, I think she was using Maya 2013 or 14, I can't remember. She was having a problem with it always crashing. Now this did fix the problem, but we wanted to dig down and try to figure out exactly what was the issue. And the issue for her happened to be where we ended up going into her FBX DAE, you know, the Autodesk plugin, into the options for exporting. And so she went like selection, export selection, and she went to the options, and she came here and she went to FBX export. And I don't have any options because my version is a lot older. She was able to get to it that way. She was also able to get to the options by actually going to export selection and selecting DAE export and then clicking options. And sometimes, I think sometimes the options, the window will have the options on the right side. And for her, it turned out where she had a thing set to automatic change the scale automatically on export from I think it was from centimeter to meter. She had it set to automatically change the scale, and it was the automatically changing the scale that messed up her exporter. And as soon as she turned off automatic, she could either set it for the scale to be manually centimeter, which is what it was created in, or she could tell it to, in the drop down menu, to manually go ahead, or to set it to convert to meter, but she couldn't use the automatic scale selection. And all that has not worked for everybody. One of the things like you would want to look at, like these are my OpenCOLLADA exporter options is I make sure that everything that doesn't need to be checked isn't checked. So I don't even have it triangulate. You could probably have triangulate set. It probably wouldn't cause a problem. The Linden Lab exporter or importer, the upload code that Linden Lab uses triangulates everything anyway. Although if you did triangulate it, it may upload even faster. Let's see. So I have, export polygon mesh. That's really important. And I have joints and skin, meaning the skin cluster. And of course, you want to export the joints. And then I have texture coordinates selected, and I have export normals selected. But I don't export anything else. I don't. Newer versions of the FBX exporter has things for like exporting out animations and deformations and all that kind of stuff. You don't want any of that stuff selected to export. So turn off as much as you can when you're exporting to minimize the possibility of it interfering and causing Maya to crash. I don't export the cameras or the animations or the invisible nodes or the constraints, or the physics or anything like that. I don't export any of those things because they're not necessary. And so like I say, so if you find Maya crashing, definitely you can try this real quick to just get your stuff exported, and then later on you can play around with the different options in your exporters if you're using the Collada, OpenCOLLADA, or if you're using the Autodesk FBX DAE exporter. And so, okay, so that's really it. I don't think there's anything else. I hope I didn't forget anything else. And we'll see you in the next video.